latest Nintendo newsletter?
Whoa, nice graphics. I'd like to get my hands on that game.
You mean you haven't played it yet? We can play it on my Nintendo Entertainment System. It's The Legend of Zelda, and it's really rad. Those creatures from Ganon are pretty bad. Octoroks, Tektites, levers too. But with your help, our hero pulls through. Yeah, go Link, yeah, get Zelda. Awesome. Intense.
The Nintendo Entertainment System. Your parents help you hook it up. The Legend of Zelda sold separately.
Hello and welcome back once again to Area 67 Gaming. I am your host, Ben Tennyson. You may recognize me from the cover of Straight Outta Compton. And today I will be talking about the debut of the greatest hero the world will ever know, Legend of Zelda on the NES. The Legend of Zelda released in 1986, set in the world of Hyrule. It was one of two games Shigeru Miyamoto was developing at the same time, being this one and Super Mario, but we've been there, done that. Seeing as he was making these games simultaneously, Shigeru Miyamoto really wanted them to be different from one another. The last thing he wanted was to make two games and they both just feel and play the same way. So really whatever he did in Super Mario, he did the opposite in Legend of Zelda. Mario is a very straightforward game, whereas Legend of Zelda is an exploratory game. Mario is very linear, whereas Zelda is anything but. Legend of Zelda was a huge success, selling over 6.5 million copies. However, Nintendo wasn't sure if this game was going to be a hit over here in the West. Nintendo's president of America, whose name I will now mispronounce, Minoru Arakawa, was worried the game would be too tough for Americans. He didn't think Americans would have the patience to solve the puzzles, so to help they developed a toll-free hotline that people could call for tips. However, once the game was successful, that call wasn't free no more. All the puzzles and forests were based on Miyamoto's childhood. He would explore the woodlands in his neighborhood, and the puzzles were based on his childhood home having a bunch of indistinguishable paper doors. The name Zelda comes from F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife, whereas Link's name is a little bit more interesting. There's actually two possible answers here. One thing I read said that Link's name comes from the Triforce and his connection to it from his past, future, and present self. Which would make sense because at the end of Skyward Sword, Ganondorf has this whole speech about how they are permanently linked to one another. And then there's what Nintendo said, which Link is a link between the player and the game. Now I don't know about you, but I definitely prefer the first one. Link's famous elf-like design also came about for a few different reasons. Miyamoto really wanted the characters to have detail and to stand out, and with the limitations of the NES, he decided to give his characters more standout features. For instance, Mario has a mustache so you can tell he has a nose. And to make Link stand out, he gave him the pointy ears and the pointy hat. Also, Shigeru Miyamoto was a very big Disney fan, so he based the design of Link around Peter Pan, who is also another character who's always on an adventure. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but there's definitely some character traits that are similar between one another. At least I think in the grand scheme of things. Besides the fact Link doesn't talk and Peter Pan never shuts up. The Triforce, by the way, is modeled after the Japanese symbol
Mitsuruko,
which when translated to English means the three dragon scales. But I think that's enough history on the game development for now. Let's go into the actual game itself. Let's dig into The Legend of Zelda on the NES. So just like every video I do on this channel, let's start where it all matters most, the story. Now I won't lie to you, I don't know who designed this manual, but like, fire them, now. Who is supposed to be able to read this text on this background? I'll do my best. A long time ago, the world was in an age of chaos. In the midst of this chaos, in a little kingdom in the land of Hyrule, a legend was being handed down from generation to generation. The Legend of the Triforce. Golden triangles possessing mystical powers. One day, an evil army attacked this peaceful little kingdom and stole the Triforce of Power. This army was led by Ganon, the powerful Prince of Darkness, who sought to plunge the world into fear and darkness under his rule. Fearing his wicked rule, Zelda, the princess of this kingdom, split up the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 fragments and hid them throughout the realm to save the last remaining Triforce from the clutches of the evil Ganon. At the same time, she commanded her most trustworthy nursemaid Impa to secretly escape into the land and go find a man with enough courage to destroy the evil Ganon. Upon hearing this, Ganon grew angry, imprisoned the princess, and sent out a party. In braving forests and mountains, Impa fled for her life from her pursuers. As she reached the very limit of her energy, she found herself surrounded by Ganon's evil henchmen. Cornered, what could she do? But wait, all was not lost. A young lad appeared. He skillfully drove off Ganon's henchmen and saved Impa from a fate worse than death. His name was Link. During his travels, he had come across Impa and Ganon's henchmen. Impa told Link the whole story of the Princess Zelda and the evil Ganon. Burning with a sense of justice, Link resolved to save Zelda, but Ganon was a powerful opponent. He held the Triforce of Power, and so in order to fight off Ganon, Link had to bring the scattered 8 fragments of the Triforce of Wisdom together to rebuild the mystical triangle. If he couldn't do this, there would be no chance Link could fight off his way into Death Mountain where Ganon lived. Can Link really destroy Ganon and save Princess Zelda? Only your skill can answer the question. Good luck, use the Triforce wisely. Now that's actually not all there is story-wise here in this manual. Right below the story there is a section that says hints on how to defeat Ganon. And this section here actually goes way more in depth with the actual game. So I thought it would be cool to read this part too. Take 2. When Impa gave Link the order to destroy Ganon, she also told him of the history of the land of Hyrule, and the layout of the 9 underground secret labyrinths. These layouts should be somewhere in this booklet. Did you find them? Relying on what Impa had told him, Link has to somehow make his way to Death Mountain. Link just might be able to find out where the mountain is by carefully studying where and when the monsters appear. In the forests and mountains there are several caves, and in these caves there live merchants who will sell Link useful items, as well as buying things here. Link can get his hands on other things that he can't get elsewhere. Lots of amazing things happen in the springs Link finds here and there. The fairies will give Link a whole new supply of life hearts. These aren't the only secrets to be found. The entrances to the underground labyrinths are hidden all over the place. There are also some entrances that are really hard to find. Nevertheless, somewhere you'll be able to find hints on how to solve these riddles. And once Link's found a labyrinth, he'll always get an item of treasure. Lots of riddles are hidden in the underground labyrinths. Once Link finds the maps and the compass, he can go forward checking each of the passageways one by one. Walk around and find all the rooms. For this, Link will have to increase his possessions a lot. In the underground labyrinths, Link will come across some doors that will close behind them once he's passed through them. Yet there's always a way to open them and escaping. Even if Link's closed in on all sides, he's not allowed to give up. Try anything to get out. Link is going to have a difficult time trying to destroy Ganon. He's real mean, but even Ganon has some weak points. Some friendly character in the game is surely to tell Link about it. Link has destroyed Ganon and has managed to rescue Princess Zelda. Now that he's got a hold of the 2 Triforces, he once again goes off on his travels, making his way towards countries unknown. Who knows what the future holds for Link? So yeah, I thought those were pretty interesting. They're like quick tips to help you progress further in the game, while also making it feel like it's a part of the story. If you didn't find that too interesting, well then...
Sorry.
But I thought it was pretty neat and I wanted to share it. Another thing in this manual is you get to see Link with his sword and shield in hand. The reason that is interesting is because this is the only incarnation of Link where he's right-handed. If you look at all character art for Link after this, he's always left-handed. It's also crazy to me to think that there is no Master Sword in this game. The best sword upgrade he gets is to the Magical Sword. We also get to see character art for the enemies, and just like in Metroid, they are way more sinister looking outside of 8-bit. I mean, just look at the Octo Rock. I definitely did not get that design from their 8-bit counterpart. And the Moblin in game looks so angry, but this character art makes him look so sad. But you know, at least he's only a little bit meaner than the Octo Rock. We get to see Zola, who annoyed my ass to death, and the meanest, most evil villain in the game, Rock. The next interesting villain in the manual, well besides the Manji aka the swastika being in here, is the Poles. The reason they're interesting is because their description says they hate loud noises. The reason for this is because in Japan, controllers also had microphones built in. So the idea was you could yell into the controller and stun or kill them all. Honestly, this manual is huge and spreads across like 50 pages. So instead of giving a rundown on every single enemy, I'll just put a link to it in the description if you want to go check it out yourself. So now it's time for me to talk about my personal journey with this game. And honestly, it's a long, depressing road. And I didn't have the hotline to call. Unless... So honestly, the game didn't start off too bad. I was enjoying myself. However, as the dungeons progressed, holy fuck, so did the enemies. You go from mauling everyone in one dungeon to losing 4 hearts a shot against another enemy in a different dungeon. And you can get pretty far in a dungeon only to find out you don't have the proper tool to complete the dungeon. So the next thing you know, you gotta go halfway across the map to get that item to come back to that dungeon, then have all the enemies respawn. Now luckily the game is pretty forgiving when you die. If you die in the over map, you just get put back at the beginning, and if you die in a dungeon, they just put you back at the beginning of the dungeon. I also forgot to mention this is the first game to include saves, or at least one of. I remember playing up until about the 4th dungeon, when I initially streamed the game a while back, to then not actually save any of my progress, so I had to contemplate life and restart the entire game. Now it is cool that the wizard will give you little tips, but like, my guy, you don't think you could do it before I'm more than halfway through a dungeon? Also, I don't need you wording it weirdly, just tell me what to go get. Instead of working around, it just hit me with, go get that shit and come back. And it was right around the 5th and 6th dungeon, this game felt impossible. I guess I missed a couple upgrades, but I mean like, come on. I also missed the bow for like majority of the game. I completely missed when I was supposed to get it and just kept going forward expecting to get it later. Until I got to a dungeon where I absolutely needed it. I believe it was the 7th or 8th dungeon. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go buy arrows. So I bought arrows. Only to find that doesn't matter at all. And I didn't realize that didn't matter until I got back to the exact spot in the dungeon where I couldn't do a damn thing. So I had to look up where I missed it to go back and get it, then to come back to that dungeon for a 3rd time just to progress further. And so many of these enemies hit so hard, I just kept wanting to make sure I had full hearts so I could stand across the entire screen just to hit them from afar. No wonder Link is such a campy character in Smash. It's the only way to play. My dude cannot take a hit. And those wizard-looking enemies, I don't know like what their deal was, but I really think they hated me. The more I played the game, the more I understood why the President of America at the time, not of the country, but of Nintendo, was saying it might be too challenging for Americans. It wasn't even the puzzles, bro. It was just the damn enemies are too hard. There were so many points I was just completely confused at what to do. And it took a lot for me to just keep pushing through. Even if I did find the game to be really frustrating at times, there was a lot of cool elements about it. It did a really good job of making everything feel really rewarding when you completed a dungeon. It also felt really cool to randomly find stuff all over the map. Now I'd be remiss if I didn't mention all the times I looked stuff up, but I needed all those hearts. Link cannot take a hit in this game. And even when I took one hit and lost the ability to shoot from afar, sometimes I just felt like it was over. There are some enemies that just feel impossible to me to maneuver around, unless you get to fire from afar. This could just be a me issue, but like, my god, this game was hard. I believe I had close to 6 hours of playtime here, and that's not even including my first take that the file didn't save. It was tough, but I was able to suffer my way through the first 7 dungeons. I did think it's cool where some of them were hidden, like for instance the one that's by the fairy lake where you have to play the flute to make the water drain to make the dungeon appear, or the one on the mountaintop that only appears if you go up 4 times straight. If you go left or right, it just restarts. I was able to make my way to Death Mountain, and around here I just started using a guide to follow me to the Promised Land. I hadn't really played many 2D Zeldas before this point. The ones I have played were the remakes, such as the Switch port of Link's Awakening. So I've never had to deal with the true nitty-gritty challenges of the original games. And this game made me suffer. And if you read the guide, it's like, go down here, come back, bomb this wall, go through here, dodge this enemy, stab this one in the face, go down, come back up, bomb here. There is so much to these mazes, it's crazy. And when I made my way to Ganon, I was completely lost again as I had no idea how to actually hit him or hurt him. I was under the impression you shot him with arrows, so I just kept shooting randomly from afar until I ran out of arrows and just fucking died, which got me really pissed off, as I do get, only to find out no, you have to slash him with a sword to make him appear, then you get to shoot him with the arrow. Only took me 3 times to figure that one out. But once I did, I was able to take him out, pick up the Triforce of Power, and rescue Princess Zelda. Now, one thing you may have noticed is they only mentioned 2 in the Triforce, the one of Wisdom and the one of Power. I don't know why they call it a Triforce here, because they don't mention Link having the one of Courage. There is no mention of a Courage Triforce anywhere, although the game manual does mention Link having a tremendous amount of courage. So maybe they were hinting at it for the sequel? I don't know, but regardless, it's weird to think of 2 and then the word try. And at the end, we do get to see Link and Zelda both holding Triforces. Now here's my question, is Link holding the Triforce of Power here? How much power do you think he's got when he's holding that thing? Because I bet he hits pretty damn hard. I wish I had that throughout the game so I could kill all his enemies in one hit. But hey, we got courage. During the credits, we get our last little Easter egg about the game. In Japan, they were worried about talent getting poached, so the creators of the game did not put their real names down. When you see producer, it says S. Miyahan, or Miyahan, and that's actually the pseudonym for Shigeru Miyamoto here. I know I mainly focused about how frustrating the game was to me, but I was really happy to actually be able to say I've beaten the original Legend of Zelda game. I've always been a big fan of Legend of Zelda, but I never got to play the 2D over-top games, besides the 2 I previously mentioned, which were remakes. When I was a kid, my first Legend of Zelda was Ocarina of Time, and that one I only had because my brother was 10 years older than me. And even then, I wouldn't say that I really beat that game. I just kept loading one of his files and going straight to Ganon and beating Ganon. But I did get really good at beating Ganon. But it's nice for me to be able to go back and see where it all began. And around here, I like to bring up if the character deserves to be in Smash. And I mean, absolutely. Of course Link deserves to be in Smash, of course Zelda deserves to be in Smash, of course Ganon deserves to be in Smash, of course even Sheik deserves to be in Smash. I know she's not in this game, but I figured I'd just mention her right now. This is the start of what would become one of the biggest franchises in gaming history. Link 100% deserved to be one of the first characters chosen to be in a Super Smash Bros. Title. He's one of the faces of Nintendo. He's still not as big as Mario, but for gamers, Legend of Zelda is one of the biggest titles. Everyone has a favorite one. And like I said, I'm glad to see where it all began. Link is the first character I've picked in every single Smash Bros. Game to play. So you know I'm going to enjoy getting to play every one of his games. In the comments, why don't you tell me what your favorite Zelda game is? And while you're at it, let me know what you thought of this video. And if you enjoyed it, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I plan to keep doing this regardless of a ton of people watch them. But if you want to support the channel, that'd be really cool. But as for me, I'm going to sign off on this video after saving Hyrule for the first of many times, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace out.
Congratulations!
Excuse me, Princess. Well, excuse me, Princess. Hey! Excuse me, Princess. Well, excuse me.